this one. Okay. But I think it's gonna be cool. I don't think it's gonna be a problem. Okay,
Okay.
all righty. So if it is, if they're
Yes.
just making 2 copies, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yes, he's. You got the chocolate
I
there.
took the smaller one though, so that makes up for it.
Just started our own meeting late.
I think they approved Microsoft last month.
Barb pulled it off last month.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I know it was on.
Yeah, it was on there.
Whatever you guys want to do. Whatever you guys, I mean, the interesting part will be if they suspend the executive order, which suspended all the rules for Open Meetings Act, you would have to write your own rules for having this type of scenario. So you'll have to draft your own rules if they revoke that and come up with your own.
There's the answer your question. That's who that is.
Yeah, it'd be an ordinance change for your meeting. I'm on it. We've already contemplated that in IT.
Why not?
Bias.
Actually, our home offices are better than our office.
They'll have a better luck writing the state ethics.
True, that's true.
Yeah,
ethics bylaw.
we
That's
just
why
use
we
our
never
building
had
as
an ethics
storage.
ordinance. The state doesn't have one.
Yeah.
That's what's their excuse. Do what you can get away with.
We'd have to,
Just to kind of.
we'd have to call upstairs, and I could call upstairs to Jane and ask him if he would like to join in by conference,
Okay.
if that's the case. Yeah, does she want to do that?
If they get caught anyway.
What's that? Yeah, what happens?
Yeah.
Oh, only if the
World-
federal government.
Yes, that one's beyond my pay grade.
They wanted John Charles Bills to roll over.
Oh, no.
And he wouldn't.
State of
For
Illinois, there's
10
a job
years.
opening. You guys gotta look out.
That was the
State's
guy
gotta
that
go to
did the red light cameras. But he didn't have anybody to roll on.
Steuben. Going to
I
Green
know
Pastures.
people over there that said he was in it alone. He was just smart,
Yeah,
Yeah.
into Pritzker.
but he got caught.
He picked somebody out of our county. to
Oh,
come
no
out.
doubt about it.
He got several $1 million. Yeah, he was rich for a while.
Right on that. Oh, man. We're waiting for. If you're online, we're waiting for the committee chair to arrive. She went to make some copies,
Okay.
but Chairman Allen will be back shortly.
4 more boxes in there.
It's cold today. It's cold outside and
Oh,
inside.
pens. Well, they fall.
Oh.
But
Are there donuts or pastries already there?
You done with the
Yeah.
We will send you a virtual donut.
They were supposed to be-
Attaboy. There we go.
they'll dry out and somebody
I
will throw them
didn't either.
away. I'm taking about 10 of them to the,
Well,
I know. I know. Pretty
the
crazy.
right side of the room. The donut room, the treat room. You know, you should. Debbie, you're late for your own meeting.
I just didn't leave enough time to do proper prep work.
On her tombstone.
Well, thank
I
you.
just didn't have enough time.
Oh, kiddo, thank you.
Yeah.
There we go. Good morning, everyone. This is the Administration Committee for September 9th, 2020. It's 10:03. I'm Deborah Allen, Chairman. We have Karen Miner as our new reporting secretary, who's going to keep us on track. Do you want to call the roll?
Yes. Davis? Frost?
Here.
Caius?
Caius present.
Hopi? Leonard?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Allen?
Present. Okay.
I believe Mr. Davis is on.
Mr.
the phone.
Davis is on.
Yeah.
Mark.
yeah.
Yes, Davis here.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mark. Glad to see you.
For the record, we have Jarrett Sanchez and Myrna Molina also. They're on.
I'm sorry.
Myrna Molina and Jarrett Sanchez. They're on. They're on.
Great. Welcome, Myrna. Welcome, Jarrett. Okay, let's see. Finance reports are in the package. We need to approve the minutes. Did everyone notice there was a minor change in the minutes? I just moved a couple of paragraphs that were in the wrong location to the proper location. That was my only change. Anyone else have any comments on the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve? Mr. Caius, Mr. Frost seconds. Any other discussion? All in favor? Roll call.
Davis?
Davis, yes.
Frost?
Yes.
Caius?
Caius, yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes, aye. Good. We have no public to comment. Is there anyone online who wants to comment?
Anybody?
No, I have no one signed up to speak.
This is for our committee?
I thought there was one Nelson or
Chuck
something. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
maybe, no?
There's no one online, so if they're not present, then we don't have them.
Okay, thank you.
Sort of wide open. Okay, thank you though, Karen, for watching for us. Okay, let's move on to facilities management. You know what? Let's start with a thank you and congratulations. I thought yesterday was mildly drizzly, but a nice turnout and the building is doing so well. Mr. Sparks, in the spirit of your comments, for all the work that you've done, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Fonstock, thank you.
Thank you.
It's truly a team endeavor. It will continue to be such. Drew, thank you for tying all the pieces parts together.
Going great. Couldn't be going better. For construction project, I don't know that we've had one major problem. And of course, we were all worried with COVID about supply, and there hasn't been any supply problems. So can't complain about a thing.
I'm planning on doing some thank yous. I'll check with people about who should get those, but now, and shoot, I took it as a good sign that Senator Oberweis showed up, that he has confidence that his money is going to come into our project.
We're watching our reserves very closely.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Capital projects.
Okay, I'm not sure if all the things that the CARE Act funds that were approved or if those fall under the category of capital projects, because we're going to be moving forward with a number of these things. One of them was Building C renovation for that area and that space. So that'll be something that we're going to get started on relatively soon here. There's some reconfiguration that's going to take place in this building on the 4th floor and also in the finance area as well. And those are all I would consider falling in the category of capital projects. So those are things that we're going to be moving forward on, trying to get those things done. We have a deadline that we have to make sure it gets done by before the end of the year. So we need to move pretty fast on those. So those are the things that we're focused on right now. In addition to the multi-use facility, I don't know if you want to save that until we get down to number 9, or we can do that right now. I do have a drone video clip. It's about 2 minutes that we can play and show everybody, and the folks that are online that didn't get a chance to take a tour. I don't know if everyone took a tour of the facility at this point or not, but the drone gives a pretty good overview of what the building and facility looks like.
Okay, any questions for Ricky? All right.
That video? Didn't know if you wanted to play the video, Rick.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could show the video, the drone video real quick. It's about 2 minutes. I'm going to point out,
That's the Sally Port for the coroner.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to point out that we did find someone by the drone that was not following protocol, did not have their safety hat on, did not have a yellow vest on. So you'll see that person coming up here, right there.
Okay.
Who took the video?
This was Wegman.
Oh,
Wegman.
You spy on them to get them comply with the helmet? No?
Yes.
There
When,
you go.
when you're standing right next to that tractor, that's when you need a vest on. more than-
Yeah.
Anybody else seeing lots of opportunity for solar panels? Thank you, Mr. Kyles.
Today so much, but
You know, in a way, we don't have to worry about landscaping. We have lovely landscaping.
Rustic.
Put a few mums around the building, we're all set.
It was built to support solar panels, so that's there.
does that figure into our energy efficient thing we're doing?
Yes. Yes. At some point, we'll get funding for that.
Great.
I think that's it. Oh,
And the roof is on? Is that what you said, or yesterday somebody had said we were expecting the roof later? That looks like it's,
It's the metal decking is on, but the roof is going on, right? The roofing materials are going on the metal decking right,
Oh, okay.
right now.
yeah.
Mark, are you enjoying this?
Yes, a lovely view
Cool.
and drier than yesterday.
yes.
Soundtrack.
The flight of the bumblebee.
Is this technology coming out of IT? Is this?
No, this was done by Wegman,
Oh,
I believe, right?
Yes.
We do have, I believe, within the sheriff, and we have some other drone capabilities, but this was done by Wegman.
Yeah, the sheriff, last week, I believe, Chris, took a drone. We haven't gotten their footage yet, but they did do a drone view of it, so.
Great. Can we subpoena that?
tell him thanks again. That was really cool. Mr. Hanson.
Good morning and thank you. And thanks for a great presentation yesterday and recognizing the people that have put all of their energy into that project to be as far along as it is. The one piece of information that I didn't hear yesterday that would be great to hear is how many local jobs that's created by having a local general contractor that subletted this out to a lot of local companies. We've created a lot of economic positive impact for Kane County residents and area residents too, that are probably spending their money before they leave the county to go home. So I don't know if that's easy to track or easy to find out, but that's something I'd love to hear before this building is complete, like how many Kane County jobs were created or how many companies benefited from by keeping the project within a local general contractor.
Yeah, we can probably get that. We do have a list of local companies that our general contractor subcontracted to. So we do have that data. as to the number of jobs that is created, I'm not sure about that. We can see if we can get that
It'd be
information.
a positive factoid to share with people as the building comes to completion.
Okay.
Okay. All right, are we ready to move on to resolutions? The first one is authorizing a contract for Kane County NCR Form Services. I believe Mr. Leonard moves.
Yes.
Thank you. May I have a second? Mr. Frost seconds. I believe this is the 60,000, and I wanted to clarify, is it 60,000 a year and 60,000 for the second year as well? Or an up to 60,000 each year?
It's up to $60,000 each year.
Okay.
It's a 2-year bid and a total amount of $60,000
For both years?
for both years.
So it's up to 30,000 a year?
Correct.
Oh, okay, all right. There are board members who will ask when we get to exec or full board. Do you want to clarify that, or do you think it is clear? I was confused, but,
Well, in the last, therefore, it kind of spells it out and it says, for a total of 2-year bid amount of $60,000.
okay. Okay,
If the question comes up, I'll be more than happy to address it.
60,000 total, yeah,
Yes.
okay, all right. Any other questions on NCR?
What does NCR stand for?
That's a good question.
I actually looked at my packet and couldn't find it.
I know it's an acronym. I did know what it was at one point. I was trying to see if it's in here.
Yeah.
They used to be National Cash Register.
Well, it's
Oh,
not that.
that's it. I was assuming the grandma's initials, but
Teresa
Go
knows.
ahead. Teresa's got it.
You got it, Teresa? Where's Teresa?
Non-carbon forms.
Oh, non-carbon.
Non-carbon
Yeah,
forms.
No
they're
Yes.
the-
carbon paper between copies.
in the old days. or-
All they do is carbon paper between and hands all out blue.
Okay, any other discussion on NCR forms? Yes, Mr.
You
Leonard?
know, I think, Madam Chairman, one other thing we should mention is there are 3 additional 1-year renewal periods. Are those for the same amount?
Those will probably be renegotiated at that time. Usually there's a small percentage increase or they may hold their prices.
Comfortable? Okay, care to call the roll?
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Fraz,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Allen.
Okay, our next one is a contract extension for King County snow plowing services, up to 160,000 a year, depending on how much snow. Do you want to lead us through this, Mr. Sparks?
Yes. So this again is an extension with Matt Construction for snow plowing services that we currently have. So it's up to $60,000 a year, but it also all depends on how much snow we get. It could be zero if we get any snow at all. So
You're always trying to balance how much we can do ourselves against what we need other people to do. And if they plow the judicial center at 4 in the morning and it needs to be done again at 8, you have to worry about whether they're available to come back and do it. And we hope for the best.
yes, it's a balancing act. You want to make sure that the snow is shoveled and plowed before the employees show up. But Mother Nature sometimes continue to snow throughout the day and you have to repeat these things. So, yeah,
Did I do a motion on this yet?
no.
Okay, may I have a motion on snow plowing? Mr. Frost, Mr. Caius seconds. Any more discussion on snow plowing the campuses? Okay, I think we're ready to call the roll when you are, Karen.
Okay. Davis,
Davis, yes.
Fraz,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Allen.
Aye. Okay, we had a request for using the courthouse for selfies for the jack-o'-lantern walk. Would someone like to move this? We'll discuss it briefly. Mr. Frost is moving it. Mr. Caius is seconding it. Ricky, do you want to talk about it at all?
Oh, this is something that the chief judge has approved. It's pretty much a place where they're gonna put some bales of hay on the old Third Street Courthouse and take selfies, so,
Sure. Yeah, they're not even planning on porta potties. I mean, they
no.
hope that people will come and do a selfie and maybe make a donation and then move on.
Yes.
Any discussion on the Jack-o'-lantern walk? Well, let's do a roll call on it. We have,
Davis?
Davis, yes.
Frez?
Yes.
Caius?
Bias, yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Allen?
aye. Okay. Under IT, we have a resolution authorizing an agreement with Microsoft for our operating system software in the amount of 405,000. Mr. Fonsack, would you care to talk about this more? Let me get a motion
Sure.
first. Mr. Froz, Mr. Leonard seconds.
Okay, first, Mark Davis gets the award for NCR. It is National Cash Register. They developed NCR forms, which are carbonless forms. So it's just historically true. So, okay, so yeah, NCR is just the company's name and they developed it. So you have Microsoft's enterprise agreement in front of you. This is a state of Illinois joint purchasing agreement. So the state of Illinois bids out through CMS all of the licensing for Microsoft. We use Microsoft for our desktops, our server environments, databases, email, and even down to our voicemail. So we use a lot of Microsoft licenses. It covers all of our employees in the county. So it's over 1,350 some employees that we cover. And I know we cover somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 servers. This is the licensing that we need from Microsoft in order to continue to use their products. So the agreement is based on the state agreement. It's 4 years. I believe it's 405,000 per year. And we are looking at the current authorized vendors and partnership arrangements. We're trying to work with Microsoft to determine what preferred partner we have to use with the state of Illinois' contract, but that will be forthcoming when we get the quotes from them. So we're asking for approval. This is a budgeted expense. It's a contractual software line item in the county's software licensing budget, and we're recommending approval.
Can I ask this question? Has it gone up from year to year to year?
We've been with the state contract for, I believe, the last 9 years on EA, something like that, 12 maybe. And there are incremental increases as you go through the years. It's, I think the biggest changes that we have are when we add significant number of people or we add a significant new system to what we do. So if we add a new database and a bunch of new people to operate in it, that's when we see the biggest impact year to year. The other change is when they change licensing modes on us. And by changing licensing modes, not to get too technical, but they'll change licensing servers from sockets to cores to, some processing measurement that they have. And the last time they did that, it took us nearly a year to negotiate, what our cost was going to be, because you buy it under one premise or one pretext, and then they change the rules and you end up having to pay according to the new methods. So, and I think right now we're pretty consistent over the last 6 years. Again, anytime we have new programs, new services, new costs. Charles, what's the user cost? New user, $600-$700 for
$740 for a new user, plus then ongoing yearly
maintenance.
costs.
Yeah. So that's to give them all the licensing for Office, for email, for the desktop, server client access, those types of things. That's all inclusive in this. The one thing that is good is under the EA agreement, we are guaranteed basically that we will always get new versions, that we'll always get the latest updates on everything. And then the last piece is that we are licensed for everything that we use, which is very important to us.
Part of the reason that I ask is that we are always worrying about our budget, and the and whether or not to raise taxes or how to dip into how to dip into our savings for rainy days and all that kind of thing. And the fact is that there are just going to be some costs that always go up. And this would be one of the obvious ones, so.
And it's one of the few things that we are heavily invested in
Sure.
and very difficult to change. It's a part of our business operations.
And it works for us. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not
it's
like
very
we're paying
successful.
for a poor product. Mr. Leonard, sorry.
Yes, I just wanted to mention, this is not to exceed 405,000 a year for up to the next 4 years. So we do have a control on the cost.
Nicely done. Other questions on this resolution? Okay, let's take a roll call.
Davis,
Davis,
Davis?
yes.
Frez,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Allen.
Aye. Okay, our next one is a continuing resolution about how we want to reimburse IT for the work that they do when they do work for people who are able to pay for it. Do you want to go
So,
forward today?
What I would like to do is I'd like to do a short presentation about some of the information, and then we're going to send information out to the committee members to review, because it's a lot of information. And that'll give you a month to read through what we're talking about, and maybe you'll have better formulated questions because it is so much information. I'm going to discuss just a little bit of the formulation of how we came up with what we're proposing. And then I'm going to show you a table that shows 3 different calculations or methods of calculating. So you'll get an idea of how we're perceiving it. So if you don't mind, I think the resolution itself, we would recommend tabling it until next month, let you look through this information after we tell you a little bit about it. And then next month we could have a brief presentation, and you could, basically what we're proposing is kind of an A, B, or C choice, because we do need to set some fee for what we do with all of our partners. They are expecting our chargebacks, and they expect to have some statement and methodology for how we calculated it. And this is what we're trying to get approved, is that method of calculating it. And this goes to agencies that receive money from the state, from grants, from federal funding. And when we do work for, say, the Workforce Investment Board, and we send them a bill, we have to substantiate what it is that they're buying, and they get audited based on that. So this is what becomes the standard for those bills and chargebacks. And then there's the offices that we do all of the various support and services for, making sure that if they're a special fund outside of the general fund, that they're paying for their actual costs. So those are the things that we're trying to achieve. So I don't know if you want to do the motion and second to table it, and then we could discuss the different things in the presentation. I only need about 10 minutes probably to discuss the presentation, but we would table the resolution till next month.
Okay, Mr. Leonard moves to table, Mr. Caius seconds. Good,
Discuss this.
Vote.
let's do the discussion.
Should we vote on that?
You can't discuss
No
table,
discussion.
table can't discuss.
Oh,
You can discuss after, you just can't discuss it before you vote.
okay, all right, let's vote on the table.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Frez,
Yes. Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Allen.
Aye. Okay, now discussion,
So-
thank you.
So just real quickly, from what we do with departments and revenue, we have a general fund budget that pays for the expenses of the IT department. And that fund, we seek chargebacks and reimbursement from different offices and departments. So this is kind of a pie chart of where that revenue comes from, and you'll see the different percentages. And obviously a lot of our revenue right now from other departments, it comes in from the circuit clerk and the Department of Transportation, and then you'll see lesser amounts coming in from public health, county clerk. judicial technology funds, those types of places. This is where our revenue comes from outside agencies and departments with special funds. So when we were looking at, our revenues, this is, if you look at the bottom part of it, 2019 revenues, and then expenses, you'll see our expenses in 2019 and 2020 are far exceed our revenues. And that's because most of our gap is general fund. If you look in the lower right-hand corner, that $3,091,000 is the gap between revenue and expenses. So a good portion of that gap is general fund expenses. It's just county operations, general fund. There is a portion of that that is special funds that are not captured by our current chargebacks. So the general fund is paying for those special fund operations. And what we're looking at is how do we calculate and consider the chargeback process, making sure that it's equitable for both the general fund and special funds. We'll skip forward. So these are the three models that we looked at. We looked at a financial unit model, which is based on, the size of their budget and the amount of their gross expenditures and budget. That one was, reviewed, and some offices spend a great deal of money and require, less computing, resources. Some spend, very little money, but require a lot of computing resources. It's kind of unbalanced. So that wasn't the one that we were looking at, and the study kind of explains why that's not a very good choice. We looked at number 2, which is personnel count, which is how many people are we supporting in an organization. And that includes, all their devices, desktops, phones, the back-end systems, databases, and all the management systems used to keep track of the people in their computing environment. That's the one that we feel represents the size of the work that we have to do for each office or department. We're actually focusing on the personnel count model in the studies. Service tickets is how many times do you call us for, support. That's kind of like the frequent flyer ticket model. You pay kind of per use. The problem is that most of the time we get tickets for implementation of new product or new services, which are project budgets usually. The tickets, hopefully if we're doing everything we should be doing, tickets are very low, especially the organizations that run efficiently and have really smart employees. We don't really have a good consistent record. What's that?
I say, but mostly you'll get calls too, and it may not go into the.
Yeah,
system,
well, we
so-
ticket everything. Our employees are told to ticket it, even if you take it in the hallway. You're
Okay.
supposed to go back and put a ticket in. But tickets are kind of relative to the customer's ability to solve their own problems too. Has nothing to do with whether or not they use our systems or not. A lot of the systems at KDOT, they're wonderful. They never call us, but that's because we have a lot of systems that we run for them, and they are very good at exercising those systems. They've been using them for a long period of time. But that doesn't mean that the work on the back end, the servers, the systems that run the network and telephones, those are all being maintained so that they do operate very well. And it cuts our costs down for supporting the end users. We're looking at the number of tech support people to end users. We're somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 to 1. So, I mean, if 150 people were having problems, one person couldn't possibly deal with it. But we're running somewhere around 150 to 1 for support. If you look at this formula, this is really what we're proposing. There's a current year budget expense. So we have our current year expenses times a CPI, which is just inflation indexed, and then dividing it by the personnel counts. That's the people part. So, yes.
Excuse me, Roger, that calculation there, do you take out the revenues before you put in the current year budget expenses or not?
Just straight expenses.
Okay.
So it's
So
all of our
wouldn't be on the
expenses.
3 million, it'd be on over 4 million.
It'd be on the entire amount averaged out per employee.
Right.
Yeah. So when you look at this, and when we talk about CPI, there's a 2% is what you've been doing annually for salaries. And then we have some software that we deal with as enterprise countywide that they tell us how much it's going to be. And usually it's up to 5%. We've been trying to argue that the county is getting, 0 in increased tax revenue. So it's very difficult for us to justify any software increases. That works sometimes, sometimes it doesn't. Usually we try to add years to the terms. Like Microsoft, if we get, hey, we want to sign up for 4 or 5 years, we'll give you a better rate if you sign up for more years. So sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work so well. But there's definitely a need to account for the increases that happen over time. Just the 2% salary in, a matter of 3 years will compound and become, 7%. So that's the formula that we're focusing on. The real question right now is, at 100% of that current year budget expense, we are including things which I'll show you in this other chart. This is the one that gets a little bit grainy and a little bit more difficult to view, but we will go
Ooh,
focus in on these top formulas here. So if you look at this top section where it has these funding models, there's 3 of them. There's 3 of those in a row. The first one is 100% shared expenses. The second one is 77%. And the third one is 65% of our actual operating expenses. So if I go to the right, the 65%, and we'll start with that one because it's probably simplest. That is just personnel costs. So if I say the county is seeking personnel costs for shared expenses, it comes out to $2,793 per employee, and you multiply that out, and the column below shows you the show back amount, which is what we show general fund departments. That's how much they cost us. And then if you wheel your way down to the bottom, you'll see chargeback amounts kick in. And if you get all the way to the bottom of this, let me just change the size a little bit. If you get all the way down, these are basically chargebacks that happen. Let's see. Okay, so you'll see the chargeback side. Right now, we currently bring in 691,000 under the established chargeback. Under 65% recovery, it'd be 1.1 million. So you can tell we're based on just personnel, we're looking at a difference that's, $500,000, 400 some thousand dollars, I think. And again, we're going to provide all of this information so that you can see the chargebacks. You can look at the columns, but that would be, one way of calculating the formula is to just look at salaries, personnel costs. When you move to the next column over, that next column is addressing like contractual services and commodities that are within the IT budget. So that's what we use in our budget to contractually support all the offices and departments. That's all inclusive. We have we go from 3.5 million to 4.1. So we have about another $600,000 in operating costs in commodities and contractual. Okay. That's within 60/60, the IT department's fund for the year. When you do that calculation, you'll see that the price, goes up another $500 roughly. Okay. And it's at 77%, and the chargebacks are based on the employee size count times that $3,308. If you move to the third column, the green column in the middle, you're going to see 5.43. So it's going up by another, 1.2 million. That column is personnel, IT, contractual, and commodities, and enterprise software that we buy for the entire county. So it's all of that enterprise software that the county shares with everyone. And we maintain the databases, we maintain the server infrastructure, the network, the telephone, everything that is shared out there. So those are the three basic propositions is, do you want to recover the costs of our employees, the costs of our employees plus operating within IT? And then lastly, the full operating costs of what we do is about 5.4 million per year. And I think that's very fair and representative of what we've done in the past. This formulation isn't new. I would tell you that most of the time we are looking at what's in the middle column, which is the IT operating costs. And I believe if you were to look at the chargebacks down through here, a lot of the chargebacks are similar or less than that, depending on which one it is. Some of these are aggregated. They have, or I guess, different special funds pay different parts for different departments. So like court clerk has about five line items in here that all add up to about the number that we used last year. So some of that might be obscure to some of you because you don't deal with special funds. So court clerk has automation funds. I'm trying to find the one for outside. I think this is it. So a good example, this is probably the one that most people are concerned about because this is one of the ones that's a discrepancy. So Forest Preserve is an outside agency, 75 people. And right now, we have an expectation on our current formula of $772,000. That's how much that costs us right now under our current formula. And under these three formulas, it would go from 209 to 248 to 321. And for our support services right now, I believe the factual amount that they pay us every year is about $12,000. So they support a very large.
But with a
organization.
tremendous amount of gratitude.
Yeah, well, and I'm only pointing this out because it is a large difference, and it's one of those things where when we look at the costs, there's some other areas where the costs actually will go down if you pick a choice like that. Yes, sir.
I have a question while we're on this topic. Do we know that is built into the computation something that attains parity for different departments? My point being, if some departments have a more sophisticated demand for services, is that in any way included in the?
We have tried to accommodate that a couple different ways when we go through this. And because of the diversity of what we do, this is the most common denominator, is that they all have people, and we use what I would call field and front end systems and back end systems and databases for every employee. And every office is so different that it's kind of like a blended rate for their office. They'll have people in their office that heavily use the finance system and HR or whatever. Then they'll have people that heavily use public safety, tablets and cars. And it is different types of computing, but on the back end, we have the same level of support in order to maintain it. So they, some offices have lots of phones, some have barely any. And that'll be a mix that you'd have to accommodate. Then you get into, they have 20 locations. They have one, and every flavor that you come up with, it's an endless battle. It just never ends. And we got into that at one time where we're like, well, we could calculate, and we calculate a rate for the phones because that has tolls associated with it. So they all get a bill for their phone as kind of like a separate phone bill. And that's based on our aggregate cost savings from running our phone system centrally, and we run it with what are called their trunk phone systems. So we pay for one really large line and just share it with everybody essentially. So it's a lot cheaper than going out and getting, individual line service. So that's, it's interesting. As you break it down, the more you break it down, we have people that say, well, I don't use a laptop, so I only have a desktop computer. What's the difference in that? I only use a laptop. I never use a desktop computer. And then, I mean, we've gone round and round, and it's like anything else. You just have to at least establish something that seems equitable. The other thing that we thought about was how do you size an organization to say they fit in this category of size and base the fees on that? So an organization that's really small with one or two people, in this scenario might cost $8,000 a year, or something. They're very small. They're not a lot of back end work for us, but at the same time, in the aggregate of things, they average the same costs. I think it's marginally different if you calculate all the different nuances. It just doesn't
Well, I
change
mean,
much.
I think you answered my question.
Okay.
It's the best effort is gonna,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be perfect, but it's gonna be the best effort we can do within the realm of common sense.
Yes, Roger, with respect to the 5.4 million in column one, your actual expenses, your IT expenses, taking the outside agencies out of that, which is approximately $350,000, are you saying that there's about $5 million excluding outside agencies that you'd like to reallocate? I think the thing we have to remember here is we're paying these fees. We're paying them through the general fund instead of independently through each department. But the bottom line is we still have those expenses. The area that I have most concern for, quite honestly, are the outside agencies. The Forest Preserve, City of Geneva, those are expenses that they've been receiving basically for free that they need to contribute on. But I think all of the other expenses, the $5 million of additional expenses, we're already paying for. This isn't an increased expense. We're just reallocating to departments. Would you agree with that, Roger?
What would happen would be our demand for general fund dollars would be the same or less based on this formula. So right now, our demand for general fund dollars would go down if you picked a formula that created more special fund revenue. So we would be less of a burden on the general fund as the revenue from these special funds pay their equitable share. If you look at the table that I highlighted at the bottom, those are the line items that we're talking about. That's where we get the actual 5.4 million. So if you want to know the source of where we came up with the expenses, those are the actual expenses from those different line items.
And those really aren't changing. Those
No.
are just your expenses.
Those are just the expenses. They'll actually go up about 2 to 5%, a year, depending on what we have to negotiate with licensing. And it won't change, what we show back to the general fund departments. They'll still see a show back, which explains how much their operation costs. The nice thing about that is if you get a general fund department that somehow creates a program or does something that creates more employees and they demand for more computing power or more computers, we would be able to come back and say, well, they added 10 people. The cost per person is, $4,000 or $5,000, per person per year. So their 10 people costs actually $40,000, $50,000 in back end IT. That's not including the capital equipment for hardware. So the decision, when we came across this a couple years back, there was a decision to bring in, college students to help work in a particular office. And in doing so, they brought in, I think it was 6 or 8 people. The next day, they're telling us they want computers, phones, wiring, everything licensed. And we're like, okay, well, 10 people that Charles just told you, it's $700 for a license for the person. Computer's about $700-800. Staff time to put it in, plus you have the actual support costs. You're probably looking at about a $10,000 change per person. And that was just
For your
just shouldered by the general fund to accommodate the fact that they did it. And so if you do 10 people, it's $100,000. So you can see how that, and then the other part that's frustrating is that with all these numbers at play, those 10 people go away 1 year. And we have the hardware, the licensing, and we have to go back and kind of start the regression and deduct it from what we're doing. And unfortunately, some things with our licensing counts, you can't just get a rebate or a refund for. You bought it for 3 years, you have it for 3 years. When you're done with the 3 years, fine, but they're not really too easygoing on giving you your money back in a refund. So we're not asking for a decision on it today. I think this is just the point where we want you to review this, and we'll send you copies of these tables so you can look at them. And we'll send you a full copy of the study. The fee study itself will look something like this. And it's done by Bradford Townsend with Financial and Strategic Management. There is a lot of language in there, and the first couple pages are the findings and his recommendation for using the people count. So we didn't do this, in a vacuum. We asked a consultant to come in and do the study so that they could substantiate the logic of why we chose what we chose. And he'll explain why certain formulas didn't work real well in the study if you want to read through it. But the bottom line was he recommended the headcount personnel, and then he recommended 100% capture. And we were telling him, well, we need options because financially the feasibility of just stomping on the gas pedal and expecting that to work probably is not feasible. So we had Barb Garza break that down into those 3 different types of cost recovery. Think about personnel, think about our contractual and commodities, and then everything, including enterprise licensing. So those are kind of the 3 categorical that we showed. Now, the other part is implementation of this. Is it, phased? Is it implemented? We're thinking next fiscal year. This fiscal year, the numbers are in, were submitted. So we would probably start formalizing this and presenting it to the offices and departments, getting out in front of them, showing them what we're proposing to do. And if the committee's pleasure is to pick one of the different formulas to phase it in, I'd like to see, something in the neighborhood of like a 3-year fee structure where we show every department and office what they would look like for 3 years. So they can plan, they know what we're dealing with. No surprises. It's just trying to accommodate and account for what we do, how much it costs, and who pays for it. That's what we're trying to accomplish.
Mr. Leonard?
Yeah, Roger, with respect to implementation, what is your earliest time you'd like to start implementing this? In other words, we're working on the 2021 budget right now. Overall, it's not going to change the budget. However, if departments have to reallocate expenses, it would. So
Yeah.
when are you looking to implement this?
I'm thinking we would actually start preparing for this in the spring. We would start telling everybody exactly what the costs are going to be, what their projected 3-year costs are going to be, tell them to prepare for, the May, June submittal for budget. I believe Forest Preserve's cycle is different than ours. Give them time to prepare and look at how they would budget. I think that the committee needs to decide, is it which model and is it phased? It's, I tell our staff, it's not our money. It's the board's decision to make. We're just showing you what it costs. We're showing you how we do it now. And we're trying to get it more formalized so that there's less misconception or less misunderstanding about the costs. And I think that has been a factor in our group of people that do our business work. Will come back and say, we need to shore up our numbers and work on this because one of the offices or departments says they don't agree with how we calculated this or that. I'm like, okay, let's do a fee study and we'll have them tell us as a professional what we should do. And then it's not us, it's unbiased. It's somebody looked at what we're doing and gave us ways of doing the chargebacks. And then when we present it to workforce investment or other agencies, it's a fee study. It demonstrates, exactly what they think is a equitable formula for collecting the revenue. And then, of course, the board gets to ultimately decide how you want to implement it. So.
Mr. Martin?
I'm not asking with this, with a state of mind. I just want to ask the question to know that we've answered it. But as it relates to the forest preserve, is there any quid pro quo in place for the rate that they've gotten? I mean, it's been there for a long time. Is there anything coming back to the county in return for the IT rate that's been established, or is that just?
I don't know of any. I know that at one time there was this arbitrarily set $50,000 number that people refer to, and you may hear about that, our kind of $50,000 number. The $50,000 at one time was something that was agreed or kind of handshake negotiated. I don't know if there's ever anything in writing, but it was done sometime in 2006, before that time period. And they had basically agreed that the Forest Preserve wanted to be on the finance system that we were putting in for New World. And we implemented New World and now Tyler New World with the Forest Preserve. And I believe that the $50,000 contributed to the license maintenance of New World Tyler systems. It contributed to capital equipment, and it also contributed to support. But it's a flat $50,000, and I think we get 12,000 of it for our support. And then how much do we get, Charles, for capital equipment from them? 20, 15?
So capital equipment, right now, every 5 years, we go through, do an inventory purchase their equipment, and then they pay us back 20% a year for 5 years. So they pay their cost kind of like
On equipment. But that capital would be outside of this formula
Okay.
entirely.
Yeah, all I want to do
Yeah.
is just make sure that we're playing with a complete
Yeah.
factual deck.
There's been questions they've asked us about do we receive revenue from fiber in the building? The only customer on the fiber in their building is them. They're the only customer on it. We haven't used that as a network distribution point. We use the branch court in St. Charles. So there is fiber in their building, but it's only really used for them right now. In the future, if we ever were to sell access to that, they obviously would be the owner and lease hold for the property. So we'd have to come up with a contract for them. I don't know of any other types of expenses that are shared, that they share.
I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that we've got the.
Monica and I talked about that Monica Myers from the Forest Preserve. I was telling her, I don't know of any that I can think of.
My memory fails at the moment also, but it
Yeah.
seems to me that there are some maintenance, management, programming things that the Forest Preserve has done or continues to do on county properties. But going back to Monica and Ken to
I would
clarify that would be.
Yeah, those would be things that we would prefer people reconcile formally as well. If they're going to say that it's a credit, it's a credit against the IT, whatever. We
Right.
just know, so we can tell Joe Onzik and finance that the reason they're not paying the revenue is because there's some offset for some other service that's provided. As long as Joe and finance and the board are happy, we're okay. We're trying to get it to where when we explain it to Joe Onzik and finance, that they understand where these numbers came from and how they're calculated. This is the most mature process that we've done for this. In the past, it's been add up our expenses under the 60/60 fund, divide by the number of employees, and that's what the rate is. And then we try to work with the offices and departments to collect it. So,
I'm sure that on the Forest Preserve side and probably at finance and admin, we will have to take up this, this issue. And if in fact there are things that we're doing on a, quid pro quo kind of basis, we'll need to look at quantifying those and, addressing this.
Mr. Leonard?
Yeah, Mark, I just wanted to mention to you, you being the finance chair for the Forest Preserve, I think realistically, what we've got to do addressing the Forest Preserve concern is look at somewhere between $250,000 and $300,000 a year more in additional expense for this, for the Forest Reserve. If we do that, we're going to be fine. And that's why I like the idea that Roger talks about implementing this. We need to start talking about this now so that when the 2022 budget for the Forest Reserve comes due July 1st, we are prepared or we have some kind of plan in order to handle either a portion or all of that expense annually.
Yeah, absolutely. We may have to recommend like a amortization over 30 years or something.
Good luck.
but, from our side of it, we'll send out, I believe Barbara sent the reports to Monica at the Forest Preserve yesterday. She was supposed to. We had it was interesting. We had thought that we had those with Monica for a period of a couple weeks. Those were sent to Monica Lawrence at the clerk's office. So,
Oops.
yeah. So I know that Barbara was trying to get those back out. And like I said, this is something we're trying to address, trying to get a good way of handling it. And obviously we'll operate, according to the board's direction. I mean, that's what we're here for. So
Fortunately, the commissioners of the Forest Preserve District and the members of the county board do talk to one another.
Mr. Caius?
Yeah, this is complicated. When you mentioned that you charge them for their services, each of the departments or entities in the county that are accepting computer services, and you try and get them to pay, or you work with them to pay it. Is there some that don't pay? That we're still trying to get in? Is that
So we struggle with that every year. It's depending on what office or what department we're dealing with, and some years we've had the chargebacks with phone bills where they'd say, well, we're over budget, so we can't pay our phone bill, or we're struggling, can we pay it late? Or we'll have some that look at it and say, it's not fair, I don't understand. And that's why we're like, okay, we need to formalize better what we're telling them. Particularly we got that from, say, the Forest Preserve when we looked at incremental increases. Ken Stanish, who's the Forest Preserve finance officer, I think that he does a great job, and he's looking after the Forest Preserve's bottom line, and he just wants to see flat expenses, which is not probably realistic on our part to expect that, but that's kind of things that we deal with. And other offices, GIS, CaneCom, others, they pay those fees. They actually understand. They're like, yeah, you guys do all of the work. And so those offices, we have maybe more influence with them about how they budget and what's important. GIS is a part of IT. We don't treat them any different. They pay their fair share, and they do it based on these rates. And it's because we see like the revenue share, or the revenue from those special funds is to the advantage of the general fund, which has the property tax limit on it and other limitations that you cannot expect to increase services and increase things without any other means of dealing with the expenses. You're going to have to do something with it. This year, our budget probably 2 to 5% on top of what we were last year, based on the licensing and personnel. And you have a somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10% of the revenue from special funds not being collected because it's just unaccounted. So where does the 10% come from then? It comes from the general fund.
And
Oh.
this doesn't, I'm not sure how to formulate it, but is it, some of these are going to be mandated services that have to be performed anyway by these departments. So that if there's, you're not going to say, well, you don't pay it, we're going to cut you off, or,
No, no,
Things
no,
like
no.
that, so-
We work with everybody. We've never, I mean,
Yeah.
even the Forest Preserve, we do things beyond the, services that are, straight support. We'll help them with any project that they come up with. And if we need project management or other services, we'll do that as well. It's just, there's a lot of other things that are inclusive in what we do than straight desktop support. I think sometimes when people look at what they're doing over there, they're like, well, I only see the one guy that helped me get my printer working and I only talk to him once a year. Well, the reason is because all the people back in that building are making all of that work, all year long, and they're maintaining it, supporting it, updating it. So the fact that you don't see the end support guy very often is a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not a negative that, hey, that should only cost me, $75 to have somebody come out and fix my printer. I mean, why does it cost so much? So those are the kinds of arguments or discussions you get into.
this
Yeah.
just formalizes that so that there's,
Yeah, it's just how
Less
do you
question about- yeah.
apply the rates? And, we came into this discussion with outside agencies that wanted us to do support for police departments and fire departments. And we told them what it would cost for us to do that. And they had the same logic. It's like, well, I only want to pay you when I call you.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, if all the systems that you run are defective and you're calling us all the time, we'd rather, fix everything, make it run the way we run it and charge you a rate per person, right? And some of them would say, that's a good idea. Geneva Township, some of those offices that we do a lot of work for them. Ultimately, it's hard to support somebody else's stuff. It's just very difficult for us to do that. And at one time, the Forest Preserve used to be in that category. 18 years ago, the Forest Preserve under Bob, was it Quinlan? Yeah, Bob bought his own equipment and tried to do much of the stuff himself. And about 2006, all of that changed and we shifted to a more centralized support for them. So when back in the day, I can remember them buying, whatever computers were on sale, and in a building with, 15, 20 people that have 15 to 20 different computers, and they'd all be breaking differently, So now everything is, basically supported under what we would recommend, and it works. It's operationally, it's successful because we don't have to supply the techs to support, the 150 to 1 versus having a ratio of maybe 100 or 50 to 1, where you're, really intensely supporting something that's not working right. So it works really well. It's pretty good. The other thing that's nice, and I'll finish with this, if you have one of these formulas adopted and you know what the rate is, you can control that over time. You know what your cost per person is over time, and you could chart that, you can graph it. It gives you a performance measure. How much IT am I paying for per person per year? Does it go up? Does it go down? Charles and I work to keep it as consistent year to year as we possibly can. So as you see a number of, $3,000 to $4,000 per person per year, that number over time, we're trying to control that to keep it consistent over time. So that's not just another benefit of having a measurement in place like this.
So you've had the experience that some of your customers with special funds have the discipline to say, I have this money coming in with my special fund and I can use it for these things. But one of the things that I need to use the special fund money for is the support for IT. And
Yes.
that's what KDOT does, and that's what Workforce Investment does, and
Health
so on. So they're just
Department, CANCOM.
paying comp. They know that
GIS.
expense is there and they have money coming in to pay for it, so they just build it into their budgets.
Yes.
And the difference with the outside agencies was somebody would say to you, can you do this for us? And you'd say, yes, it will cost this
Yes.
much. So,
And they're in that chart too. They're in the
Yeah.
bottom of that chart, what we're using for Geneva Township and some of those folks.
And then there are some of us that view it like, I only want to pay my insurance premium when I have a claim.
Great analogy. No, just kidding.
So do you guys provide any support to the recorder's office
So-
over there? Because
The recorder's office is a relatively self-contained unit. The only thing we do for them is phones, and they receive a chargeback related to that. They run a separate database for LRS, and they have contracted support services for their office IT.
okay.
And we don't, we will help Sandy Wegman with anything she asks for. We've done some, odds and ends, but I will tell you that for an office that maintains their own database and their own system, we don't hear from them.
Okay.
So not very often. They're one of the few. I think ROE is another example, Regional Office of Education. They have their own IT folks and they support most of their own. We do their phones again, and we do, I think, some internet services that they get billed for in their phones. I believe Sandy Wegman's office even has their own internet. I don't even believe they use our internet connection. So
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I didn't know
Yeah.
if they did that.
our ROE has special needs. They know they have to support teacher programs like crazy. So instead of asking our IT to develop those programs, they just do that as part of their,
they're a very different line of work than what we
Exactly, yeah.
do normally. So
okay, other questions for Roger as we get ready to study this documentation?
yeah, we'll give you all of this information. Next time we'll come back with it'll be very concise about, options A, B, and C. It will be specific to those three sets of numbers in those columns. And then we'll also be wanting to talk about a implementation schedule. And is it, A, B, C phased in? We'd really like to see a 3-year cost projection. So every office would see, 3 years of what we're going to do. And that way they're pretty well in tune to what would happen, and it's not a surprise.
That sounds really fair, and then we can be ready for that for an October vote.
Okay,
We'll plan to be ready for an October vote then on that.
that's all.
Roger, thanks for all this background. This really helps.
Welcome.
The philosophy of the thing made sense, but this
It,
helps.
the biggest challenge is just a lot of numbers, and a lot of people have been treated, kind of in different ways. There's some special funds that now pay for people that we never realized, once Barbara started going through and looking at it, she's like, well, this special fund now has employees and they're using our stuff. So we need to account for them as well. And we did. We've received a couple phone calls in the process of sharing this with people. And they're like, well, are you expecting us to pay for people out of our special fund now? And the question, okay, well, in the past, you were paying for those people out of your general fund and you have special funds. So we would like to remove it from your general fund burden and put it in your special fund. Your bill's not going to go up really. It's shifting it to the appropriate expense. And I think that helps offset some of the special fund tension. People are like, oh, okay, I see you're moving it to the right account.
It follows the
basically.
employee.
Yeah. So if you're paying for people and you use your special fund to employ a bunch of people, it has other costs. And I think that's the problem that we're seeing.
And I'm sure that everybody has fallen into the pit that you get a real inexpensive intern to do something for you for the summer. and then it turns out to have $1,000 worth of IT connected to it. So it's good to know that stuff up in front, right? Okay, good.
Thank you.
Other discussion, are we done? Okay, let's move back to our agenda. Roger, thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
Any questions?
You have no conception of time.
Mill Creek SSA, they would like to extend their snow plowing services about 42.9 a year. Can I have a motion? Mr. Froz, second, Mr. Caius. Good. Ricky, do you want to talk
Yeah,
about it
this
at
is
all?
just an extension for Mill Creek countywide snow plowing services for the next year, so.
Fine. And the joy here is they pay for it themselves.
Yes.
Okay. Karen, do you want to call the roll?
Davis,
Davis,
Davis.
yes. Yes.
Perez,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Copey, Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Allen.
Aye. Okay, I don't think we have any vehicles today.
No vehicles.
And construction was all managed wonderfully yesterday.
Yes.
A great celebration. I had a couple of people send texts to say that they had a good time and they liked it. Let's move on to the Fabian property discussion. This was tabled last month.
Yeah, can we?
Oh, I'm
can-
sorry,
one-
I'm
One
sorry.
thing before we go on to that, there is something that I probably want to bring forward. I know Teresa and I and Chris have been talking about it. We do have Corrigan and Clark's contract coming up to an end. I think it's end of November, end of November. So we have to make a decision. Do we want to move forward and bid it out, that services, or do we want to extend their contract to the end of the completion of the multi-use facility? We have a number of projects because of the CARE Act funds being approved that we don't have time to bid all these things out right away. We need to move forward on them to get them done before the end of the year. So we need some direction and guidance, I guess, from this committee as to how you guys want to move forward with that.
Okay, a discussion, Mr. Frost?
I guess the question then to Ricky, so if we were to not extend it, would we have to then do contracts for all the remaining work with them? Or
Yes. We would have to bid all those services out because they're under contract now. We can move forward with those guys without that process.
I guess my thought is, I had some misgivings about Corrigan Clark early on in the new building process. Now that we're into it, it's been fine, but I do believe that we need to review and get bids and update our architectural services. But I don't think it would be a good thing to do it at this time. Plus, we could put it in the hands of the new board that will be seated next spring. So I would recommend extending it, but at the same time, we have to be careful about continual ongoing contracts with
Yes.
them. So that would give Ricky time to maybe put a little bit of a gap in there come spring where we can wrap up some projects and extend some and start some new ones.
Yes.
But that would be my thought.
Is it logistically a problem if, let's say that that they were doing work on the vault project and the vault project wasn't done for several months? Wouldn't we just pay them billable hours until the vault project was done? I mean,
We're usually invoiced in stages. So as they complete certain sections, then we're invoiced for that. But the vault project is done, so.
okay, well, and then we've committed to the 182, which gets us through.
That's for a multi-use facility. So yes, that's committed through the term of it. But what I'm worried about is the gap in between time and additional projects that we have on our table because of the funds, the CARE Act funds been approved yesterday. We need to move forward on that. I'm still not sure if there's going to be any extension, but if there is, we want to make sure that we can move through those smoothly and meet the deadline that is placed on us to get it done in that time frame.
I guess what I was saying was that spring deadline, I don't know what month it is, but that spring date might be a clear break point.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the multi-use facility, some of the big capital projects and the COVID stuff, it might be a logical time that maybe come January or February,
We
we
cut 'em
go
off.
out to bid,
Yeah.
go out for RFQs or whatever we go out for that kind of service. And then make the decision to award a contract by the time those are all wrapped up.
Okay. Mr. Leonard?
Yes, I agree with Mr. Frost. I'm wondering, can we extend that contract with Corrigan and Clark for like a 6-month period instead of an annual, a 1-year period?
Yeah. Teresa, yes.
Yes, what we could do is have a list of the projects, whatever they're working on, with an end date of, say, June 1st. We don't give them any new projects unless there's an emergency that comes up.
Right.
Negotiate that for just a 6-month term through the end of the month, or say June 1st.
Mark? He's muted.
So,
I'm sorry, I was trying very hard to hear some of that last answer because
Should be your mic on?
I concur with, with Drew and Bill that, it could be very difficult to ever find a time where we didn't have, a project in the works and the difficulty of transition. So the ability to extend on a more specific basis or on a shorter time frame, and then allowing ourselves to still have the RFQ, RFP process would be, I think, the best for us.
Okay, other discussion? Mr. Caius?
I'm trying to think back to when we were discussing this last year. My impression was that we could have more than one architect on call, or like Corrigan Clark is, so that we could use, like if we had two, we do whatever we want to. We have 1 or 2 or 3 and have them all available as needed for any given time or any given project. Is that correct?
I would think that would be an option. I would like Teresa speak to
Yes,
that.
that is an option,
Is that
more than one.
is that better for us so we have more selection when we go forward, or?
In my opinion, it's always better to have options, so.
Yeah, my thought is too, that if we have more than one on contracted for the next year or 2 years, and so we could, at the time, without having to go out to the RFPs, say, okay, you guys do the vault one, you're on MUF, you do that till it's done. I don't know what the logistics are, but that seems like with options, it seems better to me.
Right, I'm open to options. Actually, we did that with our electrical contractors. We decided that we needed 2 for backup purposes. We had earlier this year, we had our single contractor refuse to do work. So we had to delay a bunch of things. So now we have 2 that's on staff, and we've also split out our cleaning services as well. So we're okay with that option.
And that would be similar to that, having more than one option at a given time. So we have to go through the whole process of
Yes,
trying to get 2 together.
yes.
That's
Mr.
something to
Martin?
consider.
This is a vague recollection, so it's as good as the quality of the recollection. But Ricky or Teresa would know or can find out, but I have a recollection that there's an Architectural Services Act, and that if you're a public body and you have an architect that you consider to be your regular architect, you don't need to go out for bids. But if you don't have an architect under a contract, then you have to go out to bids. It was devised to protect architects so that they, and again, I could be way off base. It's just that I remember some nuance that relates only to architects. And it was a statute written by architects for architects. And the idea of the statute was to create an obligation to put things out for bids, except in narrow circumstances. Now, having said that, I may have caused nothing but confusion, but when you say you want options, I'm just not, I would like to know that we are legally entitled to options of having 2 or 3 architects.
Right. The only one I'm familiar with is the Professional Services Selection Act for architects, engineers, and land surveyors, which is the federal QBS process. And that was how Cordigan was originally selected, under QBS. So that's why they've been under contract with the county since, I believe, 2015.
I understand. I just didn't know if we could have 2 or 3, or if you had to have a contract with one architect. And I'm just asking the question. I just want to be secure, if we go ahead in this conversation, that we're correct in our assumptions.
Probably have to do research. Well, I'm not aware that it's just only applies to architects, because we've always, well, I came from the city of Naperville. We had phase 1, 2, and 3 engineers, and we had multiple firms. We usually had 4 to 5 firms under contract for a 3-year term. And when work came up, each one gave a scope of work, and one was selected out of that group of contracted firms to
Yeah,
do
just
the
as I
work for
say,
the
this,
project.
not only is my recollection stale, but the event that I'm contemplating was probably 10, 15 years ago. So it may have been that the whole world has changed since that was the case. I'm just
Yeah.
asking the question,
Okay.
so we're
I'm not aware of that
secure.
one.
We can certainly look into that
Yeah.
and see as well, but we have been looking at recent drafts from other governmental entities, and they do have options in there that they can select multiple engineering, architect and engineering firms.
Okay.
Roger, can I?
Go ahead.
I know that
Trying to keep up.
there are circumstances under which you have like a couple of companies that do design work or something.
Sure.
And is there any problem with balancing that? Does anyone think they're being treated differently, or?
You might get that from a vendor that doesn't understand, the complexity of what you're trying to do or why. So we communicate with them, and we will sometimes ask both of them to draft proposals for us to show us how they would do something differently.
Yeah.
I can't say that they're excited if we don't pick them to do the work, but at the same time, that's an option for them to be included in what we're doing. And it's worked to our benefit, I think, to have multiple vendors that we can go to. You'll find times when you go to one of them and they tell you they don't have the people
Yeah.
to do the work. And then, you're okay, well, then I cannot do it
No.
because I don't have an option, or I have to go back out to bid. So those are just the challenges that you face when you're trying to do any type of work. I think it's applicable to what Ricky's doing as well. But
Okay, more discussion? Are you comfortable with direction?
If the direction is that we can, one, I guess, extend it for now, and then we're going to continue to work, putting together the bid specs to get it out there, but and cut it off at a certain date so that any projects, unless it's an emergency, do not go to Corey and Clark until we get a new vendor on board. If that's the understanding. Okay, then we're comfortable.
All right.
So just to repeat that again, one more time, I had a little tough time.
We're going to extend Corrigan and Clark for a certain time period
For the multi-use facility, or all projects up to that
for
point?
all projects up to a certain point. We plan to probably cut them off, I'm going to say January or something like that. Unless there's an emergency, then we would use these guys until the new vendor firm is on board. Oh, we got
June 1st.
June 1st.
Extend them through June 1st, but at some point, cut them off on new projects, say February or March, so that nothing else goes forward unless an emergency comes up.
If that's okay with everyone.
And then we would have, by that time, we'd have it set up so we'd have more than one vendor.
Yes.
So we have an option, then if they can't do it or
Yes.
covers them. Yes. thank
And
you.
obviously they'd be welcome to continue to, bid and
Sure.
be in the process. So,
Yeah, they shouldn't be excluded.
Yes.
Right, they wouldn't be
Right.
excluded. They just can be more of a mix.
Yes.
yes.
Okay,
Okay,
very good.
all right. I think, I just, my computer just, there we go. All right. We tabled the resolution on how to handle the Fabian property. And so it's back because it was tabled. Oh, the resolution that you're seeing here was the original one. And I would like us to use Chris's, the red line copy that we used last time. Yeah. And I think we passed these out, so
I don't have it.
I would like to use these changes on that resolution. I just got the wrong one into the package. So considering that we are using Chris's, which didn't change the,
I think excuse me, I think, didn't we pass it last time as an amendment to use that? Yeah. We had a vote last time too.
yeah. The problem is that I didn't get the red line copy into this month's package. And when we're talking about the resolution, I would just prefer that we use the red line copy because Chris's changes were so good. But we're open to discussion. What do we want to do with the Fabian property at this stage of the game? Mr. Martin?
Well, we're in the month of September. This resolution, if I recall it correctly, I don't have the red line with me today because it wasn't in the packet, but my recollection is that it still contemplates the concept of a special committee of the whole meeting for the board to make a review. And then we have some procedure in here for adoption of alternates and what have you. This is September. I don't see that it's realistic that this board is going to be able to take a vote on this at all by the end of the year. If in fact we have the special committee of the whole, and we've got enough special meetings right now with the COVID allocations and what have you. If we do that, it comes back here in October, we go back and have a committee meeting in October or November, we make a recommendation, and the first thing that the new board gets to do the second week of December is to vote on whether to sell a piece of property. I think that we, in a practical sense, we've lost the real estate market that was here earlier the year, but in a more conservative sense, this ought to be considered fresh by the new board in 2021. And I would move that this matter be tabled till the January meeting of the administration committee, calendar year 2021.
I'll second.
Okay. Let's take a roll call on the table.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Frost,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes?
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ellen.
Aye. Okay, thank you. More good work ahead. Anything under new business or old business for the good of the cause? May I have a motion to put the reports on file? Mr. Frost, Mr. Leonard seconds. Roll call on any discussion on reports? Roll call on putting the reports on file?
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Frost,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes?
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ellen.
Okay. Good. No need for executive session. A motion to adjourn.
Davis
Mr.
moves.
Frost And Mr. Davis will take your motion to adjourn. Mr. Frost seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Bye, Roger.
Have a great day.